when your CLA games just aren't hitting right. Thank you for joining me on this, my journey into the constraints-led approach for BJJ. My name is Sam Battlefields, and today I'm having a bit of an odd one, to be honest. Some of my CLA games just did not hit right. I was teaching a class with 2 fresh new members and 2 with a tad more experience. I found I was a little bit out of sorts with a couple of things. Caught myself giving a bit more instruction than normal, wondering if the recently awarded rank had gone to my head. And while the main focus was takedowns, in this particular part of our curriculum schedule, which was actually quite successful. Started with the usual connection games, looking to connect chest to tricep, chest to back, chest to thigh, chest to torso, the last 2 with hands clasped. I did find that I could have done a bridging game at one point. I could have made the target objectives to be chest to back or hands clasped around the torso only, but still the end game worked. A lot of cool stuff was emerging. They were getting to these connections, so we played the final portion of the takedown section from these positions. The target objectives, hands on floor or knees on floor. I absolutely loved seeing the realization that they just played out several sequences without having been shown any sequences. And some cool emergent behavior emerged.
Allow myself to introduce myself.
When they were working from the snap down position, chest on back. The person underneath was trying to bring their legs closer to them, realizing without prompt that if those hips sprawled, there was very little they could do to stop the drop. The main issue with the CLA games came from the half guard portion of the class. At the start of this week, we did some primer games, hoping to show the importance of the underhook. Start flat on back, person on top has an underhook and a crossface, person on bottom just needed to get their underhook back with a forearm under the armpit. That's it. Then we added a target objective that was to get the wrist on the opposite side of the hip over the back. And that's where it went all wrong on Wednesday. People were framing across the person on top's hip and the importance of the underhook got lost, even though I tried to cue that it was important. Yesterday, which was Thursday, it was just Will in, essentially a private lesson. And he asked if we could go through what I meant by the importance of the underhook, which was super dope because it was such a targeted question and it was in line with what I was looking to achieve. So in that session, yesterday, we played a number of mini games around half guard, with probably the biggest aha moment being evident in the game where the goal was for the person on top to push the bottom guy flat, and the goal for the person underneath was to maintain the connection with their chest on the person's hip. As he was getting prepared to get into the position by getting his chest to my hips, he was on his side with the underhook and he pulled the underhook out and put it on the other side of my body. I saw it as a really cool opportunity, so quickly said that this game actually requires him to keep the underhook, but we will try that method in the next game. In that game we wrestled, I had a lot of struggle to try and put him on his back because he had the underhook and because he had dug his head into my hip. This made it very difficult to flatten him out, but he managed to be very competitive throughout the entire time. After that game, I got him to put his arm back where he originally wanted it, and it was no competition whatsoever. Within microseconds, I'd flattened him out, and I knew at that moment I had answered his question. What is the importance of an underhook? Let's get back to today's session though. I wanted to show how easy it was for someone to pass guard when they have the underhook on top. The game was simple. Person on top was to get both of their knees either side of the hips. I actually thought this was going to be a quick game, and it took way more time than I expected. And the new guys were actually flopping onto their sides, making the representativeness of the game decrease even more than I expected. So I brought them back. Looked to create a new game. A similar thing happened. Only this time, the guys were actually bear hugging the person on top and dragging them onto them. I decided to call it there for the day, and we will revisit it next week. I brought attention to the idea that it's not good to help gravity when you're on the bottom. The next portion was kind of a bridging game between half guard and a control game. Basically, mount escape to a double enclosure of one thigh by 2 thighs. Mounted guy just had to stay in mount. Turn around, the mounted guys are now underneath in guard. Felt like an off day for me. But there were a few factors. My 8-month-old baby girl was on the sidelines, yelling throughout the session, to the point I had to move her to a place where it was going to dampen the sound because I literally couldn't hear the feedback from the students. Plus a couple of other factors, such as my work, etc., that maybe, just maybe, had messed with my ability to get deep into flow for the session. Apparently all the guys liked the class though, which means I can't be too hard on myself. If you're interested in learning more, go to battlefieldsgrappling.com.au and fill in the form. Everyone else, like, comment, subscribe.